Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marcus Moore. I'm here today in the Bronx, New York. Today's temperature is about 67 degrees. Today's date is the 9th, the 6th, 2014. Let me repeat that. Today is September the 6th, 2014. And we are here with a visitor, more like a member right now. She's going to introduce herself and she's going to tell you a little bit about why she's here. Yes.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. My name is Maria Teresa Wallace. I am here with Marcus to show him some support with his media work. I am a member of Picture the Homeless. I've been a member since 2007, off and on. I do civil rights and I do housing.
Okay, so Maria, let's get right into things, right? Now, if you could just talk a little bit about the Work Advantage program and what that meant to New Yorkers here in the city around in the time of the era of Michael Bloomberg. So you could just talk a little bit about that. And for my viewers who don't know, maybe you might could just explain a little bit in detail what the Work Advantage was.
Well, I was accepted for the Work Advantage back in 2010. But the Work Advantage has been around a little bit, maybe like over 2-3 years prior to that. So that was like say 07, 08, like 08, late 08. They had different kinds. They had the Child Advantage, the Work Advantage, the Fixed Income Advantage, which they still have. What else? They had all the DV, Domestic Violence Advantage, Short-Term Advantage, where that means that you only pay you up to a certain amount, couple months, and then you're on your own.
Who is that?
Right.
Okay.
So now,
First?
now, if I understand, right, the city took back the Work Advantage and a lot of folks went back into the shelter system. Is that what happened?
Yes.
Sort of kind of?
Yeah. What happened was some people I didn't know had left the shelter before me, and they had to go back into the shelter.
Go back into the
The
shelter.
reason why Zabbix was only to be homeless. The first year you got it. The first year you got accepted. You had your part. The second year you had to reapply. Once they accept you, then they was able to sign. You was able to stay in your part for an extra year, and they was able to get their rent. But the sad part about it, March of 2011, me and my friends at the time, because people that I know that lived in the building with me, they had, 2 had Work Advantage, no, actually 3 had Work Advantage, and 1 had, it was another advantage for St. John's University, where you go to school for like 2 years,
Right.
and they pay for the Advantage program.
Okay. Yeah. So now, maybe you can help clear up some of the stigma of people being in shelters, because you know, sometimes when I'm just out and about, I hear conversation from people who have never been homeless, who have never ever been, ladies and gentlemen, have never ever been in a shelter. One of the first things they say is that people in shelters, they need to start to get themselves together so they can get out of there, so they don't be just laying up. You know, for people who have never ever been in a shelter, don't know nothing about living in a shelter with their families and whatnot, can you just explain, because some people think it's a hotel. I remember Michael Bloomberg said that, you know, living in a shelter is the thing, is a good thing, you know what I'm saying? So if you could just touch a little bit on that, and the conditions, okay, I'm gonna say it again, the conditions that's in the shelter that families today have to live with. Okay, now you can touch on that and explain to my audience the conditions of things that go on in the shelter and how people have to live though. If you can just touch on that, because people need to know this here.
Could be falling ceilings.
Women. Falling ceilings. Okay, falling ceilings, ladies and gentlemen, in the shelter system. Where? Here in New York City. Okay?
Falling ceilings, peel off, sometimes you go into the bathroom and the toilet's not working right and they could have plumbing problems.
What about the hot water? Is it any hot water? The hot water on all the time?
You know,
Are you getting heat?
you know what it is? It's the people that works in the building, like maintenance. If they're doing their job right, then they'll get the proper heat. They'll get the proper things that has to be fixed, like painting the wall. Why cover the mold, the mildew, instead of covering it? Things should be inspected. If you're supposed to do certain things to make sure that the shelter is safe for families, couples, single men and women, you're supposed to, there are guidelines for fixing the place, make sure it's safe for people to live there and stuff like that, you know. I mean, yeah, they say that shelter is a roof over your head, I understand that, but at the same time, that shelter could be your apartment. It depends if you live in a family shelter, each apartment that each family stays in, that could be their own place.
Now, it's funny that you bringing this up now because I got this here fax that came into the office not too long ago, right?
Yeah.
Now, you guys, Picture the Homeless, you all remember Picture the Homeless. Now, I'm reading right here that you guys had an action at 941 Interville is one of a dozen of private-owned residential buildings in which the city pays as much as $3,565 a month to house homeless families. The Department of Homeless Services call them cluster site housing. Now,
you're absolutely right.
That is crazy.
Absolutely right. And the sad part about that was that there was no case managers there. The so-called service provider, which is Aguilar, they just gave them the Disappearing Act. So they reached out to because you were homeless and they told us what happened. We went down there to find out what's going on, why the case managers disappeared.
Okay, so
why they're not going to get the certain services they need. Like one sister, she said she was supposed to go on a job interview. She needed a referral to go to Dress for Sex. There was people that was concerned because they couldn't get certain documents, like you want me to apply for public assistance, but they couldn't get a residence letter. They was concerned about their mail, but we was told that they were still receiving their mail. I mean, basically, when we got there, their office was locked up, and in case they did leave a note, but why would you leave the residents in a limbo? But yet you want me to do this back to work program, you want me to go to EBR, and I can't give you documentation, say, I went to these appointments, so that way I don't get sanctioned or I don't get kicked out from the shelter.
Wow.
Because there are criteria you have to go through just to be in the shelter. But at the same time, the only thing I don't like is that when they find you ineligible, then you have to go through the whole process all over again.
That is a shame, folks. That's really a shame. So now, from what I'm understanding is that these folks on Interville, 941 Interville Avenue in the Bronx was going to be kicked out of the shelter.
Yeah, within 24 hours.
Within 24 hours. People in the Bronx was going to be kicked out, ladies and gentlemen, with housing being what it is in New York City, right? In New York City, people was going to be kicked out by DHS. What does DHS stand for? You can just tell my viewers.
The Department of Homeless Services.
Was going to be kicked out by the Department of Homeless Services out into the street due to the fact that, you know, they didn't have no caseworkers and
the service provider that they had, unfortunately, things didn't work out, so they just left people in the limbo. But at the same time, you come by a week before to say, oh, well, we need this. You have, are you interested in applying for NYCHA? Are you interested in this? Are you interested in that? You qualify for this program. You qualify for that program. But if they knew about it, why couldn't they just tell them, listen, we're here because you have to get transferred. At least if you gave them a week's notice or 2 weeks notice, then everybody could rearrange their schedule. But the point of the matter is, the way I felt, is because school's about to start, which it has started now, but prior to when that incident happened, they knew school was about to start, so they wanted to play games, and that's the way I felt. They was playing games with them and not perform. And I feel that if you want to tell people, hey, we have to shift you to another shelter, or we have to move you to another shelter, there should have been some notice ahead of time. And the Department of Homeland Services is good for that. You know, and then you jeopardize the young sister's job, or you jeopardize a young brother's job, because you have to, you know, they could lose a day's pay. The Department of Homeland Services need to understand that, you know, they're supposed to help you, not deny it.
Wow, wow, wow. So now, you know, we have heard that now. Overall, how are shelters in New York City helping people? You know, they got all these shelters. I've seen all this homelessness, 3 o'clock in the morning, seeing people these days in New York City, folks.
I feel that as far as these service providers that they are affiliated with, it seems like there's problems and nobody that's going to sit down and have a conversation. It's all about the money, but at the same time, it's all about the families, it's all about the couples, it's all about the single men and women that's going through the system right now. And it's like, if another service provider did that, that leaves people in a limbo, and it's like, wow, what's going to happen? We don't have no case managers, but yet they want us to do X, Y, Z, follow their rules and regulations, and we're left in a limbo. And then when the Department of Homeland Services come, we ask them these questions and say, I don't know. But you're supposed to be there to help us to get out of this situation, not work against people and just be like, oh, you're finally eligible, or you can go back to where you belong, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. It hurts, because then we're trying to do what you tell us to do, and you still hurt our feelings because, oh, we can't get this done, or you can't get that done. Oh, if you don't do this, you get kicked out. And I don't think that's fair.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard it live and direct from Marcus Moore. Shelter systems here in New York City. We know homelessness in New York City. A lot of us advocates, we know that homelessness is big business. We know that a lot of politicians have invested in homelessness. Now, for any more comments and questions about this here video, you can email me, Marcus Moore, at morehomesteaders@gmail.com, or you can visit my blog, homelessnothelplesstumblr.com. Once again, I'm Marcus Moore, and
Maria Teresa Wallace.
Yes. Thank you. God bless. Peace. Take care of your families and community. Marcus Moore.
Bye.